I forget, I want to hit record on this,
Okay.
and just to say, hey man, it's great to be with you. It's been too long. And my friend and author Alan Briggs is joining us for this. For those of you who will tune in on Facebook later this week, so glad to have you, man. As we're talking in the middle of the book, one of the things that stood out for me, and I don't know that we've necessarily had a lot of conversations about this, is just the transition from tourist to pilgrim. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. I know I certainly can, living in Kansas, but not being from Kansas. And I'd like to hear from Jordan, because he's been in his place a lot longer than any place I've ever lived. For me, it's 4 or 5 years here and there. Seems pretty normal for me. To stay put is really not a normal behavior for me. It's not like I'm looking for the next best thing. It just kind of life happens, and the jobs change, and so I end up moving. But I am curious about, because we've touched on a little bit already, is something that I've been thinking about. That's the sort of the intrinsic nature of the native person. Somebody who grew up in a place their whole life. And the reason it's so fresh for me is because I really, and I got to be careful here, because people watching this on Facebook are from Kansas. They're from Topeka. They're from the city and the church that we live in. But, and I don't think this speaks to them, but in my neighborhood, my neighbors really aren't friendly. In fact, I think I probably have a very unfriendly neighborhood, or not an unneighborly neighborhood, in the sense that if I'm not the one initiating the conversations, if I'm not the one pursuing them, they are not pursuing me. And I've been here for almost 4 years. So I can't even remember, and I don't think you've ever told me, how long have you been in the Springs, and at what point did you really feel like you had relational credibility in your neighborhood?
Yeah, so I've been here now 11 years, actually pastoring at the church that I currently serve at for 11 years in various capacities. I'd say there are two answers to that, Josh. Number one, you're just going to have a season where there's a little bit less credibility. People expect in my city that you come in, stay for 2 to 3 years, and then move on to the next place. You kind of have your Colorado adventure, but each place, I would say, has a slower turnover or a fast turnover. And we'd be up on the scale of 9 or 10 for a fast turnover. Maybe places like LA would be like a 10 or 11 on the scale of 10, where you're going to come in, probably not be there for long. You're chasing a dream to be able to be there. But I spent some time with a church that's struggling through neighboring, that's outside of Chicago. And they said, everyone knows each other. It's really hard for us to break in. Whereas here, I feel like it's kind of like moving into a new subdivision in many ways. There's a lot of turnover, so people are anxious to maybe get to know you, but don't really know how to go deep. People struggle to go deep, whereas in Chicago, they say it's the opposite. They're really deep. They're 40 years deep, and they really struggle to engage there. So I'd say on that kind of 1 to 10 scale, try to see where's your city, and then know kind of where your opposition's at. So I'd say for us, it took us about 5 years, for whatever reason, to understand the rhythms of the city, how it works, why December and May are crazy and you really shouldn't try to do anything extracurricular in those months, why the summer there's a lot of relational momentum, and asking your neighbors out to go on hikes and cookouts and this kind of things. And I would say the second one is just, as soon as we decided to put down roots in our neighborhood, something changed. When we said we're going to actually say no to some things and say yes to these other things. And that was a big transition point for us.
Sure. Yeah. How about you, Jordan? How many years have you been in Allendale now?
Well, it's been 13 years we've been here. So I don't know, people here, they're all like me, it's they kind of keep to themselves. If you talk to somebody, they're friendly, but you don't say hi. People don't, say hi back. It's you nod. And I don't know, it's like everybody knows the cultural norms. Everybody acts the same way. There's not, there's not a lot of people that act differently from anybody else. So it's very white bread
Mm.
here.
Mm.
I was in the grocery store yesterday, and we get students from Grand Valley in there, and there was a black couple, um, and they were in the back aisle, and I was back there shopping, and he said something to the girl, the guy did something about, are you getting something about a cake? And she'd walked halfway down the aisle that had the cake mixes, and she turned around and came walking back, and she said to him, I'm looking for the cake. I just want to buy a cake mix. And I looked right at her and I smiled and I said, are you looking for the cake mixes? And it was like she was shocked that I talked to her.
Mm.
She said, yes. I said, they're right down there on the right hand side. She said, oh, thank you. And she turned around and walked down there and grabbed a cake mix.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of the time I was in the store, I walked past 100 people. Nobody spoke. You just, but that's just how it is here. That's the cultural norm.
Mm-hmm.
And like, the places that I go for work, like if I go into Grand Rapids, like I go to a Chase Bank in a rough neighborhood where they have up the bulletproof glass and everything. But the customers coming in and out, they're all talking to each other. And they are not like, they're not like our neighborhood. It's not like our town. That's not the cultural norm. But everybody here knows, I guess we all behave the same. We all know that that's what expected.
Mm.
I'm not mad at anybody. They're not mad at anybody. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And, I have a new guy that I'm training that moved here from Chicago, and he doesn't get any of the references. We're talking about something, and I referenced Division Street, and he doesn't laugh, and I'm like, oh, he doesn't know what Division Street is. he doesn't understand the cultural references to that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's I guess because I've been in it so long that until I started reading this book, I didn't realize that that's how it is. That that stuff is assumed. You don't think about it. So,
and I think that sometimes the cultural norm that you're talking about, Jordan, is cordial versus friendly. And I grew up in Virginia, kind of the classy South, and everybody does nice things, but you don't know each other beyond a meal. You don't actually dig in. Here in Colorado, I was struck by the honesty. As soon as I moved here, it was just kind of in your face. People would say, not into church, I think that's dumb. Like, okay, well, thanks for saying that. I guess my life's a waste. I'm a pastor. But it's refreshing because they would actually say it. And so I think that cultural norm, I've gotten to walk, I don't know how many neighborhoods since writing this book, and I get invited, somewhere or whatever. I went on a monster road trip last year with Josh, got to stop in through Topeka with my boys, and I just got to see those cultural norms that you were talking about. I think some of that's the beauty of travel and of getting these kind of perspectives of going, what are the cracks or baggage, the issues in your place? Because they're very different than my place. And that's interesting, Josh, that you would say even that about your neighborhood is kind of naturally, it's not built around being friendly. It's kind of on the edge of, you're like kind of a rural suburban neighborhood. It's interesting, kind of in the middle of nowhere. And I would think there's no neighborhood out here, but then there are these houses and it appears to be kind of a suburbia there. But we all have baggage and issues. It just is different. But I think it's a great point. What are the cultural norms there, and how do they form and inform how we relate to people?
Yeah, it's something for me to keep in mind. We're entering into our 5th year here now, and so many things, are going well. And for us, the church itself is really part of our saving grace, because I feel like after 5 years, or after 4 years, I don't know. I feel like, and I'm not trying to force anything, but it just feels like my neighborhood really isn't quite my neighborhood yet. But the church is what keeps me grounded here, because I just love our church and the people in our church. And so I was telling Jacqueline, I said, I really feel like kind of coming into this new year, like something needs to click, like friendship wise, it could really make the difference for the both of us. And friendships sort of in my role beyond the staff. Like I love hanging out with the staff, but I don't only want to hang out with the staff. They can't be we can't always be together. And so we were having a lot of ongoing conversations about this, especially coming into now our 5th year here. So yeah, I'm always curious too. I'm wondering about the nature of the native person here, and not just the cultural references, like you're talking about Division Street. I happen to know, Division Street's kind of a rough place to be in Grand Rapids. You don't really want to walk alone in Division Street. But for here, I think there's a lot of folks that really, and maybe it's because I'm still new, but they take a lot of things for granted. They just don't see it. They actually see this place. And this is interesting because there was a huge community-wide survey that's been done, and the report was published on the city website. Thousands of residents took this survey, and if given the opportunity, 40% of the respondents said that they would leave Topeka. Okay, 40%. Wow. 90% said that their kids are likely to leave, and so that says something about those who call this place home and how they feel about it. And so for me, I'm trying to wrap my mind around the natives, those who grew up here, and how can they see this place differently, especially when 4 out of 10 of them want to leave so badly.
Yeah, it's the opposite for me. I saw you posted that thing. There was a job in Topeka, and I looked up Topeka, and I was like, well, where could I go sailing if I moved there? And I was looking at the lakes in Kansas and how far away it would be and stuff. And I was like, man, I don't want to leave here. I mean, I've got Muskegon, Holland, Grand Rapids, and I'm in the center. It's just, I don't want to move.
Yeah, you can't be a sailor and live in Kansas. That's for sure.
They've got a sailing club.
Well, that's news to me.
Yeah, man. They sail on that lake right by Topeka.
I don't know about sailing. Rowing? There's a rowing club. Like we've got a legit Olympic-size rowing deal.
Yeah, we have crew here on the Grand River.
Okay.
Grand Valley does crew, but
okay.
Oh, there's a lake here. I'll look up the lake a second.
What's interesting about recreation too, that's something that always comes up when people ask about the book, is that tends to be something that we hold on to so dearly, right? I mean, I love the mountains. I love fly fishing. I love trout specifically. I'm okay catching other fish, but man, I get hooked literally and metaphorically on the idea of being here in the mountains and what it offers. But I went to school in Indiana for 4 years, and what I've found is that wherever you go, there's adventure. You just got to look for it. And I started to find that actually the rhythms of what we do recreationally are perhaps our best inroad to the lost. And not always, but often the things we're passionate about, somebody else is passionate about it. Whenever I say to a room, what have been your greatest connections or kind of missional zones? And most times it's recreation. It could be I enjoy grilling, or I enjoy hammocking, or I enjoy these meetups for photos that people will go out and take in the mountains here in Colorado. But that kind of our recreation kind of groups us together. And then, of course, there's our proximity, our neighborhood. So I don't think it's a silly thing to talk about, whether it's sailing or climbing mountains or board clubs that meet at coffee shops or coffee enthusiasts even. That's a big deal here. So that always comes up in these kind of conversations.
Yeah. It's Clinton Lake. There's a sailing club on Clinton Lake.
Oh, okay, sure. I
Yeah,
have not spent a lot of time there. That's in Lawrence. Uh,
yeah. Well, it's not
yeah,
that far.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so I did. Hey, Kathy. I did have a question for you. Um, a couple of questions about the book, Alan, since you're here. Um, so, like, my son just got back from. He went to Australia with Youth with a Mission and to Papua New Guinea, and um, his team saw the most healings. Like, they saw blind people healed.
Mhm.
They prayed for them, and they were able to see again. And both of my kids and my wife went to Guatemala with Paradise Bound, and built houses. I mean, they built things that were not as nice as the shed in my backyard, but it's a house that people live in, and it's like 10 times better than what they had before they built this shed for them.
Mhm.
But they saw, they experienced things. My mind always goes back to that C.S. Lewis quote where he says, you can deduce that the cat is in the cupboard, but at some point it's a job for experience to go open the cupboard and see if the cat is there. And my kids and other people I've known have gone on these trips, and while they've done missional work and they've served other people, the greatest thing that I see is that they've come back with this. It's not a head knowledge anymore. It's how would you take that experience away from someone? My kids, Keegan went to Grand Valley, which is very, very, very liberal and anti-God. And, I had to keep telling him, with his homework, I'm like, you have to try and see it from their perspective. You can't just laugh at how ridiculous it is, because he's gone and had he's experienced God. He's experienced the work of the Holy Spirit. He's seen miracles happen because of faith and prayer. And, I mean, it's like it set his faith in concrete. So, you can try and poke holes, intellectually, but once you've gone and done those things and had those experiences, um, it just,
Mhm.
it sets it, I guess, is what I would say. And then, not that we don't see things here locally, but, I can't think of, much that's happened in our local ministry that's like what happens on these trips in, Guatemala and Papua New Guinea. So I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, my life has been changed on global mission trips, and I would just say overall the global sets way really well for the local. And when you can go somewhere else, then you come back to your own place. This happened even for me last summer doing this monster road trip with my boys. Suddenly I come back and see the potential in my own place. And it's the same thing to a level that happens when I'm away from my kids for a week. And then I come back and go, I am called deeply to shape these kids in the way of Christ. Wow. Maybe the routine beat that out of me, but it's not the routine's fault. And so I think there's that idea of that when we've seen the Holy Spirit break in somewhere else, then I think the question when we come back is, how do I need to see my local like the global? How, if this could be a foreign experience, or I could take one new risk every day, in the name of the Lord, what would that be like? So Colorado Springs is a global missions, kind of a trampoline to the world, global missions sending zone. And one of my favorite groups of people, maybe my favorite to work with, are people that have just come off the mission field and are really sad that they can't return to the global mission field. And there's this hunger to say, I know God can do things, and I've seen him do things. And then when they begin to transfer that toward our city, and I go, you can be a missionary here. There's power in that when they start to go, whoa, because they're already trained, they're equipped, they've seen the Holy Spirit do some incredible things, and then suddenly they go, wait a minute, I could actually do that here. So I would say we've seen some incredible things, and I'm hearing incredible things in communities all over where folks are just choosing to go beyond that comfort zone and God do some incredible things of healing. A lot of times here, it happens to be from addictions and from, maybe some slower healing and things like that. But we've seen people, I mean, there was a gal in our church that literally was blinded and had like a Paul experience where she was blinded and couldn't do anything, started listening to her audio Bible, came to know Jesus. We got to baptize her. I mean, crazy stuff, but that our church community was ready to see as a missions experience. So I think a lot of times, not every time, a lot of times it has to do with our eyes have been veiled by stress and fear and routine and normalcy. And once we let God break in, suddenly it's kind of like what you said. I didn't know there's a bad part of Colorado Springs. Some people that live in Colorado Springs don't know there's a bad part of Colorado Springs. And it's me meeting with church planters in that part of town to go, no, you prayer walk me through these dangerous neighborhoods. I need to see those. I need to feel that. So I'm trying every day to educate myself and sort of make the global become local. So does that make sense? At least where I'm coming from on that, Jordan?
Yeah, I was just wondering, if, in your book, if that's, how that balances.
I'm certainly not anti-global, and I want folks to know that. Now, I am a fan when folks, go global, for them to make a significant commitment if appropriate or if possible. And I think to define that vocation of missionary apart from the place. Often it's, my heart is for my wife, it was my heart's for Russia. And ultimately her heart's always been for the outsider. She just got to work with orphans in Russia. And so she was devastated when she began to realize that she wasn't going to be a full-time missionary in Russia. And then she began to realize, man, if our vocation is as in missionary, he could move me to the middle of Iowa, which is kind of where I see as like the ends of the earth. So Lord, if you would have taken me to the ends of the earth, it's like the middle of Iowa in some little town,
Anywhere but Iowa.
That's right.
Oh, come on.
Sorry. Anyone listening from Iowa, I apologize. Your ends of the earth is different than mine.
Right.
But that's kind of that idea that is, if we have the vocation of a missionary, then the place really is inconsequential to some level. And then we would pray that God over time would connect our heart to that place.
Yeah, Jordan, you would appreciate this. There's a great book. I have a hard time following him sometimes, but Os Guinness wrote a book years ago called The Call, and I think you would love that book, my friend. The book is all about the primary call of the Christian, and then secondary and third or tertiary callings, and because so many, in his argument is we often get the first calling and the second one flipped around. Mm-hmm. And so first calling is who we are in Christ. And that's, I think I'm kind of filling in to what Alan's saying, is that primary identity is as sent ones, to be carriers of the gospel. And then the secondary calling is what you do for a living, your vocation. And it's a great book. If you get a chance to read it, I recommend you read it. Read any of his stuff. I think you'd love it personally.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't read anything by him, but I took a note of what it is. So
yeah. Good.
Yeah. I'm certainly not anti-global missions. And actually, YWAM, I teach a course for them starting this fall. And so all the global missions organizations, several of them are in this city, the YWAM has 2 bases here, are starting to begin to read the book and say, man, it seems hopeful. And I want to make sure that everybody, I always say that, man, I love global missions organizations and support folks there. But really, I'm all about indigenous. However we can transfer leadership to indigenous, whether that's here in neighborhoods, and train people to reach their own neighborhoods, which is kind of behind our church's parish focus, or in, Papua New Guinea, or, you name it, Honduras, wherever it is. I am pro-indigenous ministry and I'm pro-longevity. And of course, if God wills it, right? Whenever God pulls us out of somewhere, it's his decision, not ours, ultimately. So just trying to keep those in tension and balance those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Alan, you mentioned parishes. I think just so we're all on the same page, can you explain the difference, say, between a church plant, a parish, a movement? What are you talking about when you say parish?
Yeah, well, going back to the Greek, kind of the simple translation for this, a parish would originally meant to dwell next to the sojourner. So to dwell next to the outsider, essentially. And I love that definition. And I think in an age of commuter church, which, again, I'm not fully against, there are people that drive, to our church 30 minutes and have for years. But I think there's been kind of a stirring discontent toward driving past 6, 7, 10 communities on our way to worship with our own church community. And even as you've talked about, Josh, there's different areas of Topeka where you feel aligned, based on the river there, or based on this side of the tracks or that side of the tracks, and so I think that has opportunity when we see here's a particular part of town, segment of town. In our town, we probably have 10 different areas, maybe 12 different areas that particularly a church community could really contextualize the gospel there. And so when we say parish, we want to make sure people don't just see it as a campus where somebody would go for, like a university campus, like a commuter driving for some kind of service or class or whatever, but actually as a place where we dwell and hopefully among the sojourner or the outsider. So we found that we have a central ministry hub kind of geographically located, but these parish communities really could see the gospel fleshed out relationally in neighborhoods, through their jobs, so even professionally, and really kind of function even in some of the ways that the Renaissance began to kind of take off through the old idea of a bottega, where kind of work was mixed together and with craft and relationship, and even some of that within the early church. So many people were working out of their homes, and there was this mixture in that. So when we say parish, we mean a specific geographical area where we work, live, play, and feel some spiritual responsibility to work for the good of that place or area.
Perfect. Thanks.
It's an old Catholic word, so
Yeah.
many folks recognize it if they were raised Catholic and say, "Wait a minute, it evokes curiosity."
Yeah, sure. I can't remember, Jordan. Was that both of your questions, or was there another one you had?
Yeah, that pretty much answered it.
Okay. I want to say hi to Kathy again. Kathy, I don't know if your microphone's working, but if you have any questions, feel free to fire away in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself. I'm glad you're able to join us. Yeah. So I can't hear you. I can see you, but I can't hear you. So feel free to type a question if you want as we go along. This is not related at all to the book, but I have to go there because you mentioned about killing busyness, and it just so happens, like just right here in my notes from February 24th, there's something going on there, developing tools, putting resources in people's hands to slow down. So I think it's worth talking about. And I just got off a 2-day retreat with Dr. Matthew Sleeth, who wrote the book 24/6. So it's pretty fresh on my mind. How do you Sabbath? What are your normal rhythms, and what are you thinking about these days in terms of having control over your own personal calendar, and what are you hearing from people around you?
Yeah, so Sabbath for me, I'm old school. Every Friday, we're very serious about Sabbath. But here's what's interesting: we start that with our neighbors. Free Coffee Friday kicks off Sabbath, and so I actually had some questions from folks at first, kind of because I'm pretty vocal. Because I spend a lot of time with millennials and those in their 20s whose lives are absolutely out of control. And I say, you want your life 7 days a week to stabilize, but you're not willing to take a risk 1 day a week so those other 6 can stabilize. So folks naturally began to say, well, aren't you doing ministry, on your day off? And obviously when Free Coffee Friday started, it really did feel like ministry. And now I would say it really feels like a reconnection with friends. God has knit our hearts together, and for me to realize I'm already going to drink coffee. I'm already going to spend time, probably relaxing with someone, be it my wife, my kids before they take off for school. But just choosing the who of that really has actually created some space in there to not see them as a project, but to go in strategically like it's a meeting. There's something about Sabbath where I'm just kind of ready to receive. I'm ready to give, but I'm not ready to strategize. My brain kind of turns off. So I think that's the rhythm. My brain's kind of tired, done at the end of 6 days. I also preach sometimes in 2 locations on a Saturday night or Sunday or both. And so Sunday afternoons have really become family time for us. But Fridays are date day for me. And I think the stress of the week with 4 kids saying yes to too many things is unbelievable. The kind of pressures you feel as a parent that I need to let my kid do this and they should play this and they should do soccer. And at some point you go, why? So I think that's what I'm hearing from folks, Josh, is a lot of people asking those same questions. But Sabbath is the anchor for us. I said to my wife the other day, we'll go out to a long cup of coffee afterwards, like the second cup kind of thing, or breakfast. And I said, Fridays is the space that I dream. And I think the rest of the week I do. The rest of the week I listen, I wait. The rest of the week I have meetings, I strategize. But on Fridays I get these dreams that don't well up any other day of the week, where I go, man, in the power of the Spirit, that's possible. What about this? What about this someday? We could do this. Is God leading us here? We have significant conversations. And for whatever reason, I found I'm more risky and full of courage on Fridays because I think God begins to fill me up with more than caffeine.
What is Free Coffee Fridays?
Free Coffee Friday is just simply a space where it's about an hour. We take with friends and neighbors. Across from our house is a school. And so we have, was year number 5. We finished our last week. So every week school's in session. We drink mediocre coffee with great people. And I love really good coffee, locally roasted. They don't. They were raised on Folgers. So they just want a cup of caffeine. And rain, shine, or snow, we're there. So we have bus drivers, some school administrators join us from time to time, neighbors who are generally in their 70s or 80s, and then a bunch of exhausted school parents. And that's become a place for us to converge right on the corner and kind of make a scene. Seems like every week, every other week, there's somebody we've never seen before that seems like a dad or somebody walking by who's walking a dog. And we just get to have conversations. So that honestly has become a conversation starter, space to get to know people. And then we go into deeper conversations from there about life and brokenness and family and issues, things they're grieving, why they have custody of their grandkids and wish they didn't. Those kind of conversations have all flowed from a simple cup of hot caffeine on a Friday morning. So, and honestly, it's only about 45 minutes we hang out together, or an hour or so, and then people kind of have to scatter for their day.
What time are you doing that?
It's right around school time, so 7:45 to 8:45 on Friday mornings. And when we tell folks about neighboring, we say don't dedicate one whole day of your week to that initially. Make a 1-hour commitment to be in the same place doing the same thing once a week. It could say, you could say every Friday night we have a stop in for dinner kind of thing, and you make twice the amount of food you need to. Just create something. You could say in the summers every Friday night is cornhole or bags tournament outside, or horseshoe tournament. Whoever shows up, and maybe only 3 people do. Make something that's regular so that folks can just come in at their own pace and kind of orbit around your life for a while.
Yeah, that's so good, because that's one of the things that really kind of jumped out me for this week in the reading. Just in the question, you frame it in the book is just which areas of life does your posture toward non-believers need to change to become more incarnational? And I think that, I think you just said it really well. And maybe I'm hearing it for the first time again, is just to make something routine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you can do same activity, same time, same place, weekly or monthly. It's amazing, those kind of neighborhood traditions or friend groups. We have folks that put it on their calendar to be able to invite the lost into their life. I played basketball Monday, Wednesday at the exact same time over lunch with the same group of guys for about 5 years now. Yeah. And we're starting to get to significant conversations. at this point. So whatever you like to do, maybe just transfer that outside, or whatever you like to do. For me, it's, Broncos games. How can I fold other people into? I'm already going to watch it on the couch. I might as well be on a friend's couch, or invite a friend over to my couch or whatever else. When I'm tired from preaching and cranky and have every excuse to just want to zone in on the game, how can I invite other people into this? So don't just try to create a whole bunch of new stuff. What are you already doing, and how do you shift to kind of make it more public and make a scene?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for us, that's been, at least for a bunch of guys here, it's been wing night on Thursday night, and that's been going for a couple of years now. But you can count on pretty much every Thursday night, somewhere around 8:30 p.m. Guys, after the kids are in bed, we're headed to Buffalo Wild Wings. and it's great. It's great.
Awesome.
So, any other questions? I don't expect us to go much past 9:30 my time, but certainly don't want to cut things short.
Well, I had two other things I wanted to ask real quick. First, can you send me that thing on writing? Do you need me an email, or Josh, can you send that to him so
I can send the 7 steps for launching your big idea. Yep, I can send that to you.
All right.
It's a PDF, and man, I honestly love to partner along and ask those questions at a distance, essentially. So yeah, I'd love to send that to you. You can, it's free, and you can send it to whoever.
Okay. I have a kind of an unrelated question, but since there's 2 pastors here, how do you make your sermon fit the 30 minutes, or how long do you speak? How does that always happen that it fits that time? How do you do that?
You're on the hook for this one, Josh.
So this one for me is easy because I know that I speak at a rate of 100 words per minute. So my messages, if they're fully written, and we have to write ours out in manuscript for Spanish translation, I know that I am limited to about 3,300 words. And so my 3,300 words, though, will be, Tim, our lead pastor, that could be 4,300 words for him. So he speaks at a much faster pace. He'll speak at about 150 words a minute. I just can't do it. I know my limitations, and I know my pace and my cadence. And that's just me. I speak at a much slower pace than anybody else on staff. And so I know I'm limited to 100 words per minute. Yeah. So I don't know. How about for you, Alan?
So I'm wired totally differently from Josh. If you see like a whiteboard, Josh can journal or whiteboard like a beast. And just has, not to embarrass him, but he has just a natural intelligence and affinity for words, and is just really good at research and at documenting through our coaching relationship. So, Josh does things completely differently from me, but he knows his system. And I've had to learn mine. If I manuscript things, I actually lose a lot in the kind of emotion of a story. And so I've had to learn, where do I say a particular phrase that really should be said the exact same way? And where do I kind of like to go off and maybe give myself 5 minutes for a significant story that I want to tell? And so we literally have some other folks, because I'm more right-brained and I could just kind of keep going. We have some other folks that'll come into the conversation, i.e. a keyboardist at the last point, and give that kind of 5-minute reminder. And at some points, I don't get to everything that I was going to say, and I have to trust that the Holy Spirit did what he wanted, and the Father, through the Holy Spirit, that through me did what the Father wanted to speak in that limited amount of time. The big thing for me, though, is try not or a double or a bunt or a sack fly each week. Then to me, that's a win. As opposed to trying to hit the.
I froze up.
Yeah. I think, I don't know. It might be on my end. I'm having a little bit of delay.
Okay.
That's why people want to leave Topeka. The internet's not very good.
Yeah.
So do you speak more of an outline than Alan? Do you write an outline and then speak off from that? You don't write the whole thing out?
Yeah, that's right. I do. And so, but I would never tell anyone that's the only way to do it.
No, I was just curious.
Like, just to get really specific, I highlighted in blue the things that I need to say is exactly as I've written them. I think there's an inspiration sometimes of phrases that are sticky.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah. It just cut out. It's okay. It's again, one of the benefits of piloting something like this is, there are peak times for, there are peak times. But yeah, the key phrase piece is another important aspect of preaching, the sticky phrases, and revisiting that phrase again and again in the midst of a sermon. You can get a lot of mileage out of that. Yeah.
I really like that.
Can you guys see this screen share right now?
Yeah, I really like that. I thought that was great.
Josh, can you see the screen share?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure everybody can see it. Anytime I share on this, I might write this on a napkin. Whatever this looks like in your life, find this. And, Jesus, in so many of the parties he was invited into, and he was the Pharisees didn't like his collective overlap, right? The Pharisees wanted to keep two insulated groups and insular groups separated. And I think Satan wants to keep us separated, but God wants us together, and the light of Christ shines in that collective overlap space. And so this is just something I can't not share because it's changed my life, and it's so simple. But, who are those folks we have collective overlap with? And I just want to challenge and encourage anybody watching live or later, find this. Maybe this is only 2 or 3 folks in your life. Maybe this is your family and another family. And start, and maybe God would grow that to be larger. But be faithful to those who you have collective overlap with. Don't try to do it alone, but also don't try to continue to stay insulated with those who are just other brothers and sisters in Christ.
Yeah. It's so true. One of the things I love about where Jacqueline works for the Gap at the mall, and there's a lot of overlap for her. I'm kind of living vicariously, because one of the things about being a pastor is you can become insular, because you spend all of your time, or a bulk of your time, a certain percentage of your time, equipping the saints for the work of ministry. And so then the expectation is that the saints are the ones doing the ministry. But I love being a part of her journey in this, because we have a lot of conversations about the people that she works with and their beliefs and their misconceptions about Christians in the church. And so anyway, looking for always, got me thinking just again more what ways I'm thinking we need to have a party for her coworkers. Yeah.
Sometimes, Josh, there's something that naturally facilitates it. One of them is pregnant and you throw the baby shower, or one of them is grieving and you actually step into a grief process of just want to have them over for dinner to sit with them, So sometimes it's something actually, God ordained, but even painful could happen. So I just, look for maybe some of those natural ways. Maybe she just needs to go out to eat first with some of them. The house scares people. But if it feels like, oh no, that there's a difference between pressure and then obeying, God in that. And so, think and pray, wait and see, what opportunity will come up. That's a great example of gals she works with.
Yeah. She loves it. It's a great gig.
That's cool. Well, guys, thanks for going through the book. And every time somebody reads a book that I've written, I honestly say, thanks for choosing this over Netflix. I mean, that's like a massive thing. There's so much distraction in our culture today. And it's, somebody wrote a review on it and said, like, it's way too simple. And I just laughed and I was like, yes, that's exactly what I'm aiming for. It is so easy a pastor could do it. And that's the reality.
Yeah, right.
Like if I can apply this to my life, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. And if I can apply this to my life and remember it and be able to tell stories about it and principles about it, I'm not here to write a theological treatise. I mean, that may be you, but that's not me. And so I just think that for you guys leaning into this, I just think it's near and dear to God's heart when we think about who's feels like an outsider outside of the church, and how do we convince them that they're welcome here. I think it's beautiful. So thank you guys for taking time to do this. I'm honored. Josh is awesome, and it's a blast to coach him and see him trying some new things. So wherever you guys are at, I'll pray for you as I'm driving home today, tomorrow, the next few days, that God will give you the courage to follow up on this. Take your next right step. Do something, try something. No idea if it's going to work, but lean in, obey the Father, and take some risks. See what God does this summer.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of which, I don't get paid to do this. And as a matter of fact, I just finally got around to reading this, but this is your next book's coming out this fall, and it's called Everyone's a Genius: Unleashing Creativity for the Sake of the World. You want to say a few things before we sign off tonight?
I'm so excited about this, because it's something that I feel like here's the question. What could happen if the spiritual gifts left the building? Not left the building for good, but left the building intentionally 6 days a week. I mean, how would that transform our work? How would that transform the things that we want to do in our spare time, even some of our neighboring, even some of professionally, how we relate to people? And it has been challenging for me, but it's been really exciting to look for new giftings within people that we haven't affirmed before. And I just think our world is getting increasingly creative, or maybe we're going back to original creative call that we were maybe stifled from for a while. And so maybe my favorite part in there is 18 different types of gifting in people and wiring that we haven't appreciated before. And some folks that are early readers of the whole manuscript have said, man, I start looking for people now that are of these gifts, and that people would affirm other folks. That gives us courage to be able to head out. So I think affirmation for ministry is alcohol to karaoke, right? Mm-hmm. Is that when somebody says, oh, I can't sing this, and then they go to the bar and they get a few drinks. When someone tells you that you are wired and gifted in something, I feel like I can do it now. Wow, somebody says I see it in me. I felt so insecure before, and we all feel that insecurity. So I talk about the creative process in there, and here's just kind of the quote, a C.S. Lewis quote, where really C.S. Lewis said he found this idea of good work decreasingly in the world. And he said, I can't really find it amongst theologians, but I find it amongst those in the trades, those working on the ships and cobblers, and those essentially working with their hands on a regular basis. So I think there's a recovery, not just of good works, Ephesians 2:10 talks about for us, but good work, to actually, in the image of God, do the work that he's wired us to do and do it with excellence. So, man, I am jacked up about this, and already how it's really speaking to store owners and hairstylists and folks that traditionally we haven't affirmed in the church. So don't get me started, Josh. That's for a whole nother day. But you're a genius. I'm a genius. Everyone's a genius because we have a genius. So that's all.
Yeah, good. Thanks for being with us tonight, Alan. Really appreciate your time, and great to catch up with you. And have a great week, man. And we'll catch up soon.
I encourage you to be with you guys. Josh, love you, man. Jordan, Kathy, great to meet you guys. However I can help, just let me know.
You bet.
Thank you.
You bet. Thanks. I'm just gonna hit the stop button on the recording now.